Thing. Okay, so hello everybody. This is Amir Levy, and today I'm going to interview um, Rick Dragon. Say a couple of words about him. Well, Rick Dragon is the co-founder of and CEO of Dragon Search Online marketing agency, which has provided services to a wide range of national brands. During his career, he has spent over 15 years in digital media. Rick had focus on user experience and process improvement methodologies in application and web development. Rick is currently a columnist in Marketing Land and Social Media Monthly, and a frequency speaker at search and social conferences like Blogworld, SMX, East, Brands, COF, and Gravity Summit, and others. Rick is a frequency presenter for Google Gets American Business Online, and we're not speaking or writing. Rick is often be found behind drums, sit in a jazz lounge, or in his studio painting, which is amazing from my point of view, writing that. So, hello, Rick.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. So I'm very excited to talk to you, and I would like to start with a thing that I wrote. I wrote you're doing here is Google Get American Business Online. Can you say something about this?
Well, that was a program that Google had. I'm not sure that they've continued that program, but it was a large effort on their part to go across the U.S. and basically present and give information and resources to small businesses with the objective of helping those small businesses use online media, digital marketing to further their business. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. And here in the U.S., of course, we have very, very large brands are using these technologies beautifully, but it hasn't always filtered down to the main, what we call the main street, the mom and pop businesses on the street.
Yeah, I know. In Israel, it's the same. Mm-hmm. So do you have it all around the world, or just in the States?
That program was just in the States.
Okay.
I'll add, by the way, that it was a real blast to get to do training for Google because they flew me all over the United States. I got to meet all sorts of people, and I got great Google swag. So I've got towels and jackets and all sorts of great Google stuff. But it was a blast. It was great working with the company. For many of us in marketing, Google's the 800-pound gorilla. They're huge. They run the world, and it's this giant corporation, and it's a wonderful thing to actually get to meet people working in the various teams at Google and get to know the human side of the brand.
Yeah, of course. Okay, and you're well known for your blogging and for your writing, and I would like you to share with us some of your strategies and the know-how of how to write a good blogging which can convert and can be written and can be transferred to other people. Some of your thoughts.
I think the playbook on what is effective and what works well. Number one, it's different for different verticals. If you're in healthcare versus entertainment versus consumer packaged goods, each of these is very likely to have different opportunities. And by the way, I can probably prepend everything I say about social media strategy with the words depending on your vertical, depending on your company, depending on your brand, because it's so different and it's not one size fits all. The other great opportunity is that it's changing. And one of the big changes that we're experiencing on our end that we're watching very closely, when you look out there in a lot of the spaces, a lot of people are creating blog posts. And it's almost getting to be like there's so much noise. There was a satirical article in The Onion, and it said there's now 2,000 content creators for every content consumer. They were just joking, but Doesn't it feel like that sometimes? And there's just so much mediocre stuff. And what I'm seeing as a trend is a lot of brands slowing down and going, hey, wait a minute. What if we look at our content calendar, our blogging calendar, and create 4 really awesome pieces of content through the year, things that require hundreds of hours in investment, and then a lot of light stuff, more topical, quick things, images, short things, almost a little bit more like what you see from a guy like Seth Godin, right?
Yes.
So mixing between the really deep content and the really shallow but quality content, and spending less effort in that stuff that just seems to suck up your time without giving you as much payback.
But I agree with you. But when you have a good blog, it shines. You see it. People read it like crazy, and
this is true.
And when someone is not writing right, and there are many people who tell you how to blog, to blog right, and what to do. And I want your point of view of what you do, what the little thing that you do and the big things that you do in order to attract people to keep on reading your blogs.
Well, I mean, I'm fortunate. One of the main blogs that I write is a weekly column for Social Media Today called Big Brand Theory. And in Big Brand Theory, I have a built-in theme. Every week I get to interview, marketing managers or senior marketers from very large brands. So I've interviewed people from Ford, Merck, people from Dunkin' Donut, MasterCard, Visa,
okay.
Really large brands, and get to hear what they're doing. So I write this weekly column, and that's been a really big advantage. On the other hand, like I said, I've seen some of my favorite blogs, like somebody like Avinash Kaushik's blog, Occam's Razor, where he writes these pieces that are 15,000 words long, breaks all the rules of blogging, right? And yet they're the best blog posts written on the web in our space. And then you've got somebody, like I mentioned, Seth Godin, who seems to fire out these things with 200 words or an image, and they're very successful. So, one of the things I'm very shy of, Amir, is the idea that there's particular rules that you have to adhere to. Quality, passionate content seems to win the day. And so I personally endeavor to go where my passions take me. I tend to less write about, here's the top 10 things you should do on Twitter, but I prefer to really dig into the psychology and sociology of my topics.
Okay, great. I would like to talk about very important thing, which I know it's many small and medium business have problem with that. It's how to deal with social media and how to combine it with your own market strategy. I know you have your business and you get money for dealing with those companies and helping them. So let's start with a strategy.
Sure. And I'll walk you through a few of the various steps. When we create a strategy, we have a framework for the creation of the strategy, and we always start off with what we call desired outcomes. And desired outcomes covers the full gamut of what's the purpose of a brand and organization, the leadership vision, what are the goals and objectives, down to the very specific metrics that are going to move the needle for this brand. We do a very big piece of work for each client around that element and really map and document these desired outcomes. The next step that we do is we dig in and we grow to understand the brand voice, the brand personality. And we document this because ultimately, if you're going to have a full team of people working on your social media, there needs to be cohesiveness around the brand voice. And a lot of times we go into a brand and we start talking about the brand voice and they don't really have it clearly articulated. So we typically do a piece of work around that.
And sometimes you have to tell them what their voice is. They don't know their voice sometimes. Am I right?
True. Yeah, we frequently, for instance, we'll do workshops with executive teams, and we'll talk about the different brand personalities. There's a beautiful model of brand personalities that was created by a woman named Jennifer Acker. Now, Jennifer Acker, she's the author or the co-author of the Dragonfly Effect. She's absolutely brilliant. If you don't know her blog, I highly recommend it, or her books. And her father is a very, very famous brand thinker by the name of David Acker. Well, Jennifer wrote a paper many years ago about the brand personalities, and she maps out these 5 major segments and subsegments and then tertiary segments, and the mapping is really nice, and we've taken that into executive teams and basically articulated working sessions around these brand attributes and help those teams identify what they are. So the next big piece of work that we get involved with is what we call micro-segmentation. Micro-segmentation isn't just looking at your typical marketing segments, your demographic or behavioral or psychographic segments, but it's really starting to identify certain segments of customers and then sub-segments until we get all the way down to very, very small groups or potential groups of audience. So for instance, we were doing a project for a nonprofit that helped musicians. And if you start with the central premise of, well, who cares about musicians and their well-being? Well, certainly people who put on concerts, people who have recording studios, people in music education. Let's take one of those sub-segments, people in education. Well, there's people, in the universities. Which universities? Well, there's Berklee School of Music here in the U.S. It's very famous. Well, then we were able to identify that at Berklee, there was a group of people that were really into world music. And by the way, there was a subgroup in that group that goes out dancing every Thursday night. Okay. And that's a micro segment, right? By mapping out these micro segments and developing a document, documenting them, we can identify the most likely to have, traction. So we can start to go after these micro segments, do the research around their communities. And the community research is the next piece of work. So we research the communities, what people are talking about, what they care about. And then the final step, or the next step, is looking at the influencers of those communities. So it's a tremendously large research project, which by the time you finish, you really understand the brand's potential with social media. Okay, so that's step one.
Okay, so this is very important stage. It's like you come, you tell them, okay, let me handle your strategy. I think you don't know something. This is what you tell them, or you don't tell them. You tell them, okay, let me help you with that, and then both of you and the company started to understand where you're going, who your customer really is, and we didn't talk about social media yet. We're talking about just marketing.
That's right.
And as I understand, your company says to your clients, listen, we don't only deal with social media. Am I right?
That is true. And ideally, under ideal circumstances, a brand invites us in to help them, and they're not telling us how to solve the problem. They're sharing with us the problem. Gee, we're trying to grow our business 20%. We're trying to gain a primary position in the market. We're trying to expand our customer base, whatever it may be. And then we can talk about the digital marketing strategies that can help move the needle for that particular brand. Okay,
and you don't only work with social media, you probably work with Google AdWords and all of this. Okay, very good.
Full suite of digital marketing.
Very good, okay.
So the other thing that we get involved with now we can get into social media very particularly. And one of the first things that has always struck me is that a lot of people say, oh, we're doing social media marketing, and they think of it as one big entity. But the reality is, when you dig in and really look at what social media marketing is about, there's 5 major modes or modalities of social media marketing. So the first thing we have to do is sort of break those apart and look at what is best going to serve a brand's needs. Now, the first mode is what we call brand maintenance. Now, brand maintenance is when you're listening, you're doing your social listening, you're maintaining social accounts, a customer comes in and goes, hey, my flight didn't take off on time. You respond. You're there and you're responding. That's maintenance. That's really important with brands that have a high customer touch point. So brands like airlines, banks, shoe sales, any e-commerce site, all of those types of businesses are going to need to invest very heavily in this brand maintenance mode of social media. The next mode that we get into is community work. Now, when you're doing community work, don't just think of specific communities, whether it's geographic or even interest-based, but you have communities of brand advocates, for instance. So you can have an internal brand ambassador program. You can have an external brand ambassador program. You can have employees. You can have a lot of different communities. You can have communities of people that gather around your shared passion point, right? So these are ways, if you look at a community approach, you're really going to get involved with these communities and become an important voice, perhaps even manage your own community or join another community. The third mode is influencer marketing. So imagine if I sit back and I go, well, who are the top 10 or top 20 people in my industry that if they talked about me would have the biggest impact on my business?
Okay.
And I look out there, let's just say I have a hotel, a luxury hotel, and I identify the top 10 travel bloggers that if they were talking about my brand would have the biggest impact. So in this mode of social media marketing, we identify the influencers, we connect with them, we build relationships with those influencers. We may ultimately meet them in person until we reach a point in which we're having engagement, conversation, and maybe they're even talking about us to their audiences. Okay, so that's 3. The fourth is what we call reputation management, but that includes the world of thought leadership. So somebody who takes on a thought leadership, you write a book, you go to conferences, you speak at conferences, you write for Harvard Business Review, you're a thought leader. And that can take a lot of different forms. And so in the realm of reputation management, there's both proactive and reactive reputation management. There's a lot of things you can focus on with a brand, but it's a particular mode of social media marketing. That's 4. Now we get to the 5th. The 5th is...
Let me stop you on the 4 just a minute.
Sure.
Some of the companies will say, well, Rick, we can't do it. We're not good at it. Let's say being an influencer. We're not good at it. We can't do it. Can you do it for us? Or can we neglect this part because it's not us? You probably had this.
Well, certainly for some brands it's not an appropriate approach. Most of the time when I go into service-based organizations, a lot of B2B organizations, they typically have some really incredible brain power inside the company. You even go to, let's say a pharmaceutical company, and they've got a doctor over here who's been developing, clinical trials for cancer for the past 20 years. He's a thought leader. And he may even already be writing and speaking to his audience. We can help that. It's pretty rare that we go into an organization and they're like, we just can't do it. It's not something we can do for a client. It's usually a situation in which they have a tremendous amount of inherent knowledge embedded in the organization, and we can help them get that knowledge out to best help the brand.
Great. Okay.
You wouldn't have a brand, let's say, like a Coca-Cola or a consumer packaged goods. It's very doubtful that they're going to go into the thought leadership approach. Very doubtful. However, you do see consumer packaged goods going into the realm of content marketing, and that is an area of thought leadership. So a brand like Red Bull, where they send a guy up, to the stratosphere to do a free fall jump, they're creating all sorts of wonderful content. In fact, Red Bull actually puts out a magazine dedicated to extreme living. They're very focused on content marketing. That's a form of thought leadership and reputation management, right?
Okay.
So it can be done. You know, usually, again, they have the resources, or at least they're going to help hire the resources.
Okay, great. Number 4 is done.
So when you get into the fifth is the least exciting to me. It's what we call the big splash. And the big splash are these big creative campaigns. They may be viral videos. They may be, you know, for instance, the Old Spice Guy campaign. They're things that typically get a lot of attention. Usually you have a big media buy behind them. And they don't build community. They don't necessarily build thought leadership, but they get a lot of attention. So it's an approach to social media marketing. It's what a lot of people think social media marketing is, and it can be very valuable, but typically not by itself. So what a brand can do, or a brand manager, or an executive marketer, can look at these 5 major modes of digital marketing, of social media marketing, and you might say, well, I'm going to spend about 30% of my effort on maintenance mode. I'm going to spend maybe 40% of my effort on content marketing, thought leadership. And you can do a mix that's appropriate for your brand. It isn't that you just choose one and that's it. You may choose 3 of those or 4 of those. You may choose all 5. You just have to realize that your resources are finite, whether you're paying somebody else to do the work or whether you have an internal team. Your resources are not infinite. So where are you going to dedicate those resources to make the biggest bang for your buck?
Okay. And you talked about this fifth. Is this it regarding regarding the numbers and the things that you should do?
That everything seems to fall within those 5 modalities. I've yet to find something that doesn't.
Okay, great. And what about medias like LinkedIn, Facebook, Google?
Well, one of the great things, Amir, you know, if we go back to that piece of work we did, and we looked at, you know, our audience micro-segmentation, we looked at the communities that they're in. When we do that piece of work, we go, oh, look, there's a group of people over here on LinkedIn talking about this subject that's very important to us. Or look at all these consumers, they're all on Facebook, or they're all on Twitter. So by doing that research, we're identifying where our appropriate audiences are. By looking at those 5 major modalities, we figured out how we want to engage our audiences. We now can build a tactical plan for going into a particular social media platform to make magic happen.
Great. This is amazing. Okay, and then you talk to them in the way they're in the media they're used to walk. If they're LinkedIn, they talk to them like a business person.
That's correct.
Facebook, then like family, I don't know, partying and all other things that Facebook include. Okay, great. So another thing, and another issue, another important thing that you had is this famous book, which is Improve Your Social Media Process, which is, yes, show us.
There you go.
Great.
It's called Social Marketology. It's published by McGraw-Hill. And I talk about that whole framework that I discuss here. We go, each chapter covers a major component of that process framework.
Okay, this actually I saw the reviews in Amazon, and you got 4.7, which is amazing. I didn't read the book yet, but I certainly intend to do it. So you say that in this book there is these five stages. What do you think this make this book so special? Why people love it so much?
Well, you know, it's funny, and I have to go back a little bit to 7 years ago, And at that point, I had two companies. One company focused on web and application development, and that was my first company. In that company, we became very process-oriented and what's called process improvement oriented. So you have things like Six Sigma or Lean. And we've always been very process oriented. Now, then all of a sudden, we're doing search marketing. This thing called social media started happening. It was only about 7 years ago that Twitter debuted at South by Southwest, that Facebook surpassed MySpace as the leading social platform, these types of things, and all of a sudden we're confronted with social media. Well, you have to think, all over the place, marketers all across the world are running this way and running that way and trying to figure out what the heck to do and who in the organization is going to do it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, yeah, we got Mary to do it. She's right out of college. She understands social media, that type of thing. They didn't know what to do. And many brands still don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So our approach was, hey, how do we bring process to this? How can we bring sort of a step-by-step process that a brand manager or marketer can go through to develop a cohesive understanding of what they should do and not be confused, not be waylaid by all the change that's inherent in these platforms. I mean, we were at one point, I can tell you, doing a particular effort here called Level 5. It started with the question, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is my mother, 5 is you're the best marketer in the world. How good are we or a particular brand at, say, Facebook marketing? Scale of 1 to 5. Again, 1, it's my mom who isn't on Facebook. 5 is you're the best Facebook marketer in the world. Or how do you look at Google Plus that way or LinkedIn? So we started studying LinkedIn and what it meant to be a level 5 marketer on LinkedIn. As we're studying it, this is 2 years ago, LinkedIn started going through changes. Before 2 years ago, it was a pretty rudimentary platform. Today, it's an extremely robust social platform. And every day we would look at it, it changed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you master marketing on these platforms if they're changing so radically every day? I mean, we've seen changes with Facebook where, one day a brand is showing up in people's streams and 3 months later the brand isn't showing up at all. So it's a very volatile space. It's rapidly changing. So it can be confusing for the marketer. But if the marketer steps back and understands these platforms and bigger archetypes, that what you have going on here is not so confusing. For instance, if you look at the design patterns inherent in Facebook or LinkedIn, you start to realize that you're working with very similar design patterns. It's very rare that a new design pattern comes along. It happens, but by that time, you're equipped for it. So the book is meant to serve as a bigger, broader understanding of the big, deep thinking stuff behind social media. It's not, oh, here's what you need to go do on Twitter tomorrow, because that's going to change tomorrow. And as a marketer, you've got to see the bigger picture.
This is the way to survive. I have to tell you something. I had a story with about one social media person who told me, well, Facebook, they're always changing the algorithm. Every now and then, they have changed it, and I need to read a lot of articles. I can't do anything. How can I work like this? And I said, no, something is not doing right. And you said it now. You said it. You have to step back and look on the process, on the way things work, and actually they work pretty much the same. And it's amazing. It's right. You're right.
Well, and that's why I think also, there's a certain level of complexity in our world today. They say that no human being could wake up tomorrow morning and make one of these, right? A simple computer mouse. No human being could wake up tomorrow and make one of these. How do you make plastic? How do you make electronics? I don't know how to do that stuff. No single person knows how to do it. The complexity of technologies around us have become so deep that it requires vast teams of people building on the knowledge of yesterday to do things. And it's no different with social media. It used to be when I first started out, I could master everything about, let's say, web development. And I could go into the big room where my employees are and I could say, oh, this is what you should do, that's what you should do. And I could be the guy who knew it all. And that day is long past. There's no way I can be the guy who knows it all. It's just not feasible. So I have to have people who really spend a lot of time, let's say, on Pinterest and really master what Pinterest can do for a business or what Twitter or Baidu can do for brands. You know, it requires a lot of effort, and people have to be fanatical. They've got to eat, drink, and sleep this stuff. And then we're able to come together and talk about the big picture and make great things happen.
Great, great. Okay. So, you know, in my community, in my small community, there's a lot of talking about Facebook versus Google, Google Plus. And some say you shouldn't invest now in Google. Just wait for them to overcome their issues, and they probably will bloom someday, but not today. And someday, no, they're blooming now, and you should be in there. Interesting for me. What's your thought about this?
Well, I want to scream and jump up and down. You know, no, you want to play in Google Sandbox. You know, there's a lot of reasons you want to go ahead and invest in Google Plus now, and why it's a very, very important platform. It is true that compared to Facebook, it doesn't have the critical mass of people playing there and sharing there. You do, however, have very particular communities of people that are very involved with Google Plus. So it's a really great opportunity to, you know, basically have an impact. You know, why go someplace? It's a little bit like there's a concept in advertising where, you know, if you tried to spend $1 million in North America on advertising for your brand, it would do nothing. It would be like taking your money and just lighting a match to it, right? But if you were to take that $1 million and just go to one city, like Chicago, you could make an impact, right? And it's the same thing. If you go and put your 10 hours of effort into Facebook, you may find that it really doesn't do a lot, and yet that same effort in Google Plus can have a tremendous impact. But that's still not the reason to play in Google Plus. That's just one reason. The other reason is because it's Google. And Google is taking those signals and using them in their search algorithms. They very much are. So on one hand, you've got authorship. You as an author, you're posting content out there in the world. You want to make sure that there's a good connection between your content and you as an individual on Google+. That establishes credibility and authority. Ultimately, you've got to understand that engineers at Google want to give the best response to somebody searching for something. I'm searching for information about, you know, staplers, red staplers. Google wants to make sure I get the right information back. So its algorithms create connections between authors of content and the communities that they're in. It creates connections between particular words and whether those words give it the right context. So there's a lot of reasons to be using Google+. It informs Google as a search engine as well. So that's the other component there. No, I would play in Google all I can.
Okay, amazing. So, okay, so let's conclude. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for the interesting conversation and your thoughts. I'm sure like our community will appreciate it. Do you have any thing you see in the near or in the far future regarding social media?
Well, there certainly are some trends that we can all sort of see happening. You know, none of us have the crystal ball, right? I mean, who would have ever seen Pinterest coming along and being so important to so many brands? And yet it is. That one surprised me. But some of the things that we are seeing is the Internet of Everything, where, this stapler will be able to know when it's out of staples, and will somehow get that message and replenish staples. Homes are becoming smart homes. The idea of why Google
Cellular
bought
phone.
the Nest thermostats for homes, smart home technology, smart clothing. We've got that coming along. We've got the rise and ubiquity of mobile. I know that Israel is light years ahead of the U.S. in mobile technology. We're starting to catch up here, and it's starting to be as important here. And so you're seeing the rise of mobile over desktop by far. Web designers are now not thinking about the desktop first anymore. They're thinking about mobile first, right? So these are huge, huge changes. And you're also seeing the concept that in marketing itself, the brands are starting to realize that getting up on their soapbox and saying, hey, my brand is the best, buy my stuff. Instead what we need to be talking about is some shared passion we have together. This completely transforms what marketing is about and the entire art of business communication. So the world is a wonderful, brave new world. It's changing rapidly. It's the most exciting time in the history of mankind to be a marketer.
It is, and social media as well. And I see it all the time now that many marketers doesn't understand truly what is social media and making a lot of mistakes. And this is the place where people like me and you can shine, can have their thoughts, and then and our community to do things, wonderful things. So again,
well, thanks
thank
for having me
you
as your
so
guest.
much.
I hope to visit you in Israel someday, and thank you for having me as your guest. And please, anybody out there, feel free to connect with me on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or Google+.
Of course, everything will be and Pinterest, very good. Everything will be added to the video, and of course the podcast, and maybe we'll do some slide regarding that. So again, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for our next talk.
Thank you, Amir. Take care.
Bye bye.